Hello, everyone. Welcome to Satan and Coffee. I hope you are all doing well. It's good to see everybody. It's good to see everybody. Maeve, I'm glad you're enjoying the music. I honestly have no idea who the artist is. All I know is like the first track is literally called Aggressive Metal Sinister. Then it goes Astaroth, Baphomet, Beelzebub, Belial, and Pazuzu. Are the names of the tracks. So they're metal, they work, and I feel like because Satan and Coffee is a morning show, the whole, I think metal is a better thing to open up with rather than, you know, like that kind of Satan mantra thing that we got from Behemoth X for the evening shows. I think that fits more for the evening shows, and something heavier and darker kind of fits for the morning shows. So I hope everyone is doing well. If you notice, the background is a little bit different. The background is different because I've moved my desk. Like I said yesterday, the reason we didn't do Apocrypha is because Dyra and I had moved around the entire downstairs. So where I'm sitting now, we used to have our kind of living room area, which is technically designed for the dining room. And it's just because we didn't have a curtain on the main window in the living room area, and we do now. And because our table is massive, it seats 8 people. It looked kind of goofy over there in the living room area. So we just used yesterday to move everything around. And I took the opportunity to redo the cable management on the desk and stuff like that. And so the longest part of the whole thing was the desk, was setting up the desk. It was super easy to get the table over here, super easy to get the sofas over there, put the TV on that wall over there. The desk itself, doing the cable management, everything, it took like 3 hours to do that. Okay, I'm there you go. So, that was Dyra asking me to open up an electrolyte. So, there you go. Hello, Evie, how's it going? Good to see you. Good to see you. So hopefully, depending on the availability of Mystic, we will be doing Apocrypha tonight. If not, Dyra and I are talking about doing an episode of Adversary. There's a topic that we want to talk about. Yeah, headache depending. I don't know if you guys heard that, but there's a topic that we want to talk about. I was like, I gotta readjust the focus so it focuses on my face and not behind me. There we go. There's a topic we want to talk about, which is kind of like this, the new kind of concept for twin flame and soulmates, which is the string theory. And it's pretty interesting, the take that we have on it. So it was originally going to be a Satan and Coffee episode, but she said that she really, really liked it and wanted to have her input on it. So it's like, all right, we can do it as an Apocrypha episode. We were supposed to do it last night. Didn't do Apocrypha. So if Apocrypha doesn't happen tonight, that's what we're going to be talking about. So we'll see what happens. We'll keep you guys posted on what's going to be happening with that. So I do hope you guys like the new background. It's a bit, I guess, it's a bit brighter than it usually is. But I think the lighting is good. Unfortunately, you guys can't see really. I have a neon pentagram right there, and then above that, like above the tapestry back there, there's actually, faux stained glass. And I was hoping to be able to have that in the video, but if I move the camera up any further, you're gonna be like, this is what you're gonna see. So it's got to stay where it's at. So today, what we're gonna be talking about, what today's episode is on, the occult is not a side quest. Now, I know that we like to rant on and on and on about this shit, right? But I really am starting to kind of get irritated with people that are just like aesthetic witches. Like, I mean, aesthetic can be part of it. Don't get me wrong. Like, I mean, like we all want like, you know, a badass looking altar, and, you know, we want, you know, us to kind of reflect our spirituality and have a certain look and vibe to ourselves. You know, that's, you know, a normal thing, you know, and that's fine. There's nothing inherently wrong with that. It's just, if the only time you practice magic, is when your eyeliner is sharp, your candles are black, and your camera is on, you're not a witch, you're a tourist. The left-hand path is not an aesthetic, it is a transformation, and it will devour you if you keep treating it like a weekend hobby. Okay? For those that don't know, that is the lovely Dyra having breakfast and coffee or tea or what have you. I mean, coffee and a bagel. So on the main camera, you can actually see her, but in here, you can only see her arm. So, so she is an inadvertent guest on Satan and Coffee this morning, and enjoying her breakfast bagel and coffee. After all, I mean, it is Satan and coffee, so I hope you all a Satan bagel. There you go. That's some good stuff. Yeah. The LHP is a full contact discipline. It's not a fashion accessory or a mood board. And I feel like that's kind of like the direction that it's going, is that the left-hand path and, you know, all of this stuff is kind of becoming kind of more like, it feels like a mood board. Like if you go through like Witch Talk, if you go through the occultists on Instagram, it definitely, it feels more like it has a mood board kind of vibe to it. I feel like people go on Pinterest. They go on Pinterest to you know, get ideas for aesthetic, and then they take a bunch of pictures of a bunch of shit that they bought. And here's the thing too, like here's another thing, like I think I've said this before, but I'll say it again. Like when you look at somebody's altar and it looks pristine, those motherfuckers are not practicing magic. Because when you actually practice magic, it is messy. Okay, like wax gets all over the place, incense dust gets all over the place, ash gets into your, you know, your altar cloth, you burn holes in your fucking table, you know, like there's just it's like when I say it's a full contact discipline, like I mean that shit, right? And it's just this pop spirituality, right? Is what it's become. Is this idea of, you know, making everything look good, uploading it to Instagram for the likes, for the shares, for the comments, right? And there's no actual practice behind it, you know. So aesthetic witch, right? Curated altars, hashtags, buying ritual tools they never use, right? That's what I mean by aesthetic witch, right? Social media is kind of like a double-edged sword with this, because you get exposure and you get dilution. Okay. Even in ancient temples, there were spectators versus initiates, right? So when we look at that, like, even if you think of like, you know, the temples of Apollo and stuff like that, there were people that actually performed ritual, and then there were people there to experience the ritual, right? And I think the thing is we don't have that defined difference today. Like, I think that's one of the biggest issues that we're kind of running into, is we don't have the defined difference of somebody that can believe in this stuff but doesn't practice it, to somebody that believes in it and practices it. Because it's not a bad thing to believe in this stuff and not want to actively practice it. Like there's not a problem with that, right? But I think that, you know, we're missing that defined difference. Okay, we're missing that idea of who is an occultist and who is somebody that is a spectator. And there's nothing wrong with being a spectator. There's nothing wrong with it. But I think we need to bring that back, right? What the left-hand path demands, discipline over dopamine, right? Ritual is habit, not hype, right? And shadow work is a daily autopsy of the self. Okay, so ritual work is something that you go into. I feel like that's the same as people going to church on Sundays. For people who only devote maybe 1% of their lives to their spirituality, going to church is great. Yeah, exactly. You know, I think that it's something that, you know, people kind of need to, I don't know, people just need to kind of like identify who they are and accept who they are and stop pretending to be something that they're not. Right. Because I think that, you know, if you want to sit there and you want to read the books and you want to have, you know, the knowledge, you want to know about these things and, you know, you want to work with these things externally. Because, I mean, the thing is, I mean, it wasn't like, if you go back in time, and it wasn't uncommon, you know, for the townsfolk to, you know, go to, you know, the actual practitioner and be like, hey, I need this done, this done, this done, and this done. And, you know, having that stuff done by, you know, whoever was, you know, working the stuff. And I have found that there are some people that are like that. They just don't identify as anything. Those are usually the people that are, you know, buying ritual work and stuff like that from practitioners. That they, you know, they believe in it, they believe in the power of it, they believe that it does work, but they don't want to practice it themselves. And I actually have a lot of respect for those people, because they're not pretending to be something that they're not. You know, they're not sitting there acting like, you know, they are something that they aren't, and that they're doing things that they're not actually doing, you know, so they accept their position. So not everybody is a practitioner. So I feel that to be an occultist, to identify oneself as an occultist, it is to be practicing the occult, right? Because the occult is a craft. We understand this, right? It's a developmental craft. It grows, it sways, weighs, things like that. And it's something to build off of. If you're not building on the practice, then you're not an occultist. You believe in, you know, certain entities, but above so below, as without, so within. People are missing this meaning. Your inner work should show in your outer work. If your outer work is for display, you will not achieve anything of value. Thank you, Maeve. Yeah, I could not have said that better myself, because I didn't. I didn't say it better. I think that is put exactly how, what the point that I'm trying to get across here, right? Gnosis over gimmicks, direct experience of the demonic versus regurgitating Tumblr posts. This is another thing that irritates the shit out of me, is people not talking about their own experiences, right? Magic is embodiment, not optics. Exactly. You know, regurgitating Tumblr posts, regurgitating posts. I think this is another thing that kind of really irritates me, is that people kind of come in, and when you hear people talk about a demon, when you hear people talk about an experience, it's very reminiscent of every other fucking person that you've ever heard talk about how their experience was. Like there's no originality in the experience, right? And usually, like, if there is any originality in this experience, it's somebody talking some really stupid shit, like the guy that we had on Apocrypha like a few years ago, talking about Lucifer's black hand reaching through a purple portal above his altar and grabbing him by the throat. And it's like, if you fully believe that physically happened to you, then I'm sorry, man, but like 5150, because that's not normal, right? Um, like I'm kind of don't like the idea that people treat, you know, the occult like D&D. I think that's the best way to put it. I think that honestly is the best way to put it. I'm really tired of people treating the occult like it's a game of D&D, like they're playing Dungeons and Dragons, right? Like, you know, they equate, you know, their power level to how many authors they can rattle off, how many sigils they know, instead of like actually going in and making their own sigils, finding their own sigils. Great respect to Behemoth X. You know, I mean, through his work, you know, he was able to kind of, you know, grab, you know, Satan's sigil, right? Not what we traditionally believe to be Satan's sigil, but Satan's actual fucking sigil. You know, through my work, I was able to get Baphomet's sigil, which none of you have ever actually seen. Which with the book, once it's published, then you'll be able to see it. It has been sent to Llewellyn and a couple of other publishers, waiting to hear back. So from them, it was sent out about a week ago. So we'll see what happens. But that sigil will be in there. I fire magic missile out my ass, pew pew. Right? Exactly. You know, so it's just it's just fucking ridiculous how people treat like the occult like it's like real world Dungeons and Dragons or some shit, you know. And it's like there's nothing wrong with liking Dungeons and Dragons. There's nothing wrong with being into that. There's nothing wrong with even incorporating a little bit of, you know, your occult practice into like a game of Dungeons and Dragons. I know I do. Like, I mean, I'm a big geek. I loved D&D, you know. I got myself some, you know, I got my black and red dice and stuff like that, you know. So, you know, all of that is great. Dionysus, we are well. So, thank you for asking. I hope you are well as well. So, you know, there's nothing wrong with incorporating that. It's just like when you start treating magic like it is actually fucking D&D. D&D may be a bridge into understanding or looking into what occult is. Yeah, exactly. You know, and it's honestly like, I mean, yeah, I mean, who doesn't want, like, you know, to shoot a fireball out of their ass? You know, I mean, like, I know I fucking would, but, you know, I also know it's, you know, it's impossible, right? That's the laws of physics. You know, it doesn't matter how much spicy food I eat, you know, it's gonna burn, but it's not gonna be a fireball. So, you know, there's nothing wrong with wanting to have, you know, a level of, you know, fantasy, but understanding the line and the differential of where fantasy begins and where reality begins, right? Fantasy ends and reality begins. You need to understand those lines and those differentials. You know, if you're in a game of D&D, it's pure fantasy. You know, have your way, shoot as many fireballs out of your ass and dick as you want. But, you know, when it comes to reality, you know, you're working with, you know, the shadow, you're working with your energy, you're working with, you know, who you are, you know, as a person, and you're putting that energy out into the universe. And it's very different than, you know, playing a fantasy game. You know, we need to understand that difference. You know, transformation over trend. The path rewires you. Your goals, fears, and sense of self shift permanently, right? You know, the dabblers, like, who never get results because they never dig deeper than surface level symbolism, right? And so, and I think this is another big problem, is people are so obsessed with like symbolism and the symbols and the sigils and, you know, what this means and what that means, and, you know, getting sigils tattooed on their body and shit like that, and not ever actually doing anything. I mean, I've seen people with sigils that don't even know what the fuck they mean. Like, I've seen people, there are people that get like, sigil of Lucifer tattooed on them because they saw it someplace else and they thought it looked cool, and they have no idea that it's the sigil of Lucifer. Like, I mean, how do you not know that? How do you get that tattooed on you and not know what the fuck it is? It's like people wearing band t-shirts, like wearing Bauhaus t-shirts and not knowing who the fuck Bauhaus is. Like, I just thought it looked cool. I've never actually listened to them, and it's kind of like, what? It's ridiculous. Individuation is the true goal, right? So integrating the conscious, and the unconscious into a unified self. Demons are mirrors and catalysts for confronting the shadow. The pact isn't with an external being alone. It's with the parts of yourself you've denied. I want that sigil tattooed on the back of my leg. Ooh, nice. I got it done on my... I can never show you guys like actually like how good that looks. So I mean, I designed it myself, made it look how I wanted it to look, right? I can't, it just gets all twisty and shit. But I guess, yeah, I don't know. And I incorporated the pentagram into it, so I don't know. I just like how it flows. But I think one of the things that are missed a lot of the times when we kind of talk about pacts and stuff like that is we're not just talking about like, the first pact that you should make is a pact with yourself. We need to, like, when it comes to the pacts that we make, and we make a pact with ourselves, we need to start working with our own energy more. It's just kind of like, I want to have a clear, crisp sigil and some negative space around it, but then add some black flame surrounding it. Nice. Sounds badass. Sounds awesome. But yeah, definitely. I think another thing is like, people are also obsessed like with the idea of working with demons and working with gods and working with this and working with that. And it's like, I mean, those are definitely things to get into, at some point. But I think like people are forgetting, like, you have your own energy, you have your own power. You can use your own power in ritual. Like, I mean, when you're casting a spell, I mean, it's coming from yourself. It's and then when you are able to control and use your own power and your own ability, then you can take that and you can move that and perpetuate that outward, and then you can enhance that by working with an external entity. But if you don't know how to work with your own power, if you can't go into a ritual or cast a spell using your own ability, then what's the point? Like, truly, like, what's the point? There is no point. Like, that's the first thing you need to master is yourself, right? Working with Lucifer to dismantle self-sabotaging narratives is, an example. Like, so if you understand your own power, you understand your own ability, the first time that you work with an entity, it should be, self-work. It should be wanting gnosis. Like, going into ritual and asking for money off the bat, which it seems to be like the two biggest things that people use magic for, which I find absolutely ridiculous, is love and money. Like, and I just kind of sit there and I just kind of think, I'm like, if you're having a hard time finding love and all of your relationships have been shit, there's one common denominator in all of your relationships that have been shit. And it's not the other person. if you're having a hard time getting money and you keep getting fired from your job, or you're not getting that that pay raise, you're not getting the position that you want, there's one common denominator to everything that's happening. There's one common denominator to all the businesses that you're applying to. There's one common denominator to the reason, every time you ask for that raise and you get told no. There's one common denominator. You. Fix you first before you try to fix other stuff. You need to fix you first. Because if you're not going to be able to fix you, if you're not going to fix yourself, then what's the point? What's the point? Why even bother? Right? So the first ritual you should do with an entity should be done to fix yourself. Huh. Interesting. Very interesting. Would you work with an undocumented entity? I can't find any sources for it, which makes me wonder if it's an aspect of myself, but it's opened my eyes. And so, yes, I would most definitely work with an undocumented entity. I think, the thing is there's different levels to understanding of like unlocking hidden shit, right? There's different levels to this. So we know that the occult is uncovering the hidden, right? Like we know that that's what it is, right? And so there's stages to that, because there are things that are hidden to everyone, and then there are things that are just hidden to you. So hidden to you, like if you're a beginning practitioner, if you're starting out, then working in the Goetia, working the Qliphoth, the Kabbalah, like all of this stuff it's hidden to you. You don't know this stuff yet, right? It's unknown knowledge for you. After a few years of working the processes, right, there gets to a point where you begin to understand that, okay, so this stuff was hidden to me in the beginning. It isn't anymore, and it's not hidden knowledge to the rest of the world. It's something that somebody, like, if they hear the word Goetia and they're wondering what the hell it means, they can look it up, right? That's not hidden. That's just, temporary ignorance that can be, resolved by a Google search. And then there's, I think, the other level to the occult, whereas going in and finding stuff that people haven't written about yet. Or maybe people did write about it and it got destroyed. So there are plenty of times that I'll go into ritual. I won't call on anything, but I will fucking dive my hands into the black void and see what grabs on. Right? And sometimes, it works. Sometimes it doesn't, but I find that to be probably the most, I don't want to say the most advanced, because that just seems a bit pretentious, but it's definitely a higher level of occult working and search for gnosis, right? Because I'm not asking for anything. I'm not asking for money. I'm not asking for love. I'm not asking for a house. I'm not asking for a car. I'm not asking for anything material. When I go into ritual, unless, of course, I'm doing client work. If I'm doing client work, a client says, I want my dream life. And I'm like, all right, whatever. I've got to go in and I've got to put that forth. Now, if they're not putting the fucking work in, it's not going to work anyway. But I did my side of it, right? They still need to do their part, and they're aware of that. Like they're aware that there's their part that they have to put into it in order for shit to work. When it comes to me, I have an understanding that when it comes to the physical world around me, there isn't really much of anything in this world that I can achieve by putting my own work into it. I don't need a spirit or a demon or a god or an elf or a fairy to help me with it, right? At most, what I will do is I'll do like, a Lucifer working and be like, hey, I need a defined path here, right? This is where I want to go. How can I get there? Right? Not that I'm not asking Lucifer to get me there, because he's not going to fucking do that, nor is any of them. But to give me kind of like a clear, kind of like cut, kind of like, okay, what do I need to do to get to where I want to go? Right? And listening to your instincts, right? Listening to that voice in your head and that thing in your gut that says, this is a good idea, this is a bad idea. Listen to that, because most of the time it's right. Right? But when I work with all of these entities that I work with, my focus isn't getting something from them, but rather how can I get the thing? How can I go about getting the things that I want to achieve in my life? Right? And then I put the work into that. Like that's how this works. That's how this should work. So a lot of the time when I'm going into ritual with any entity, I'm not asking for anything, right? Is there a way to make inconsistent spirit, like, who has a double center of gravity? So what do you mean by a way to make? Like, what do you mean? Like, make would be referring to build, right? Like, elaborate on that question. I might be able to provide you an answer. Possibly. So I don't ask for anything. And if I do ask for anything, it's always gnosis. It's always, what do you want me to know? What do you want me to know? What am I missing? What do I need to know? Right? Is there something going on, right, that I'm not seeing, that I'm missing, right? And sometimes I don't get anything back. Sometimes I do. It really depends. It kind of goes back and forth, right? So, I mean, make them more consistent in how they answer. No, there is no way to make an entity more consistent. And I mean, that's actually a really good question, because when I first started working with Baphomet, it took 2 years before Baphomet answered back. 2 years of working with Baphomet, 2 years of reverence and worshiping, dedication, before I got anything back from my first workings with Baphomet. After that, like, once the faucet was open, it's like, the levee broke, But entities will work with you or answer you on their own time. Usually if they don't answer, it's because there's something that's missing. There's something that they want you to achieve on your own before they begin to make their presence known to you. So if you're trying to work with something and you're getting a little bit here and a little bit there, and it's not consistent, then, I mean, you've got, the hard part done. You've established contact, but maybe you're asking the wrong questions. Maybe your reasons for being in ritual aren't the right ones, right? And it's something to kind of look at. So, well, see, that's one of the things that I think that a lot of people kind of like. I think that that's like a big misconception. It's like asking anything to help you do anything. I mean, depending on what it is, you might get this, you might get that, but like, it's always, the wording is extremely important. The vernacular that's used, right? The syntax in which you're speaking is, extremely important. when you're asking for anything. Because if you're asking, do this thing for me, like if you go to like Lucifer, Belial, or something like that, and you're like, give me $1 million. I mean, the response you're going to get back is probably silence. And the idea of, do I look like a fucking bank? Do I look like a bank to you? Do I look like, an ATM? It's the wrong question, right? It's the wrong demand, right? You're saying, well, give me this. It's not going to happen. They're not going to give you shit. But if you say, hey, I want to make $1 million, how can I do that? What ideas do I have in myself that would allow me to have this $1 million idea? That makes more sense. That's more respondable. It also takes in responsibility and accountability for your own actions, right? The reason why I've always said that Christianity was like the lazy man's religion is because people would get on their hands and knees and they would pray to whatever the fuck it is that they're praying to, right? The God that they're praying to, and be like, I need a new job. I need more money. I need a new car. I need a new house. I need this. I need that. And then do absolutely nothing to that work. And then if something happens that they want to happen, God be praised. If something happens that they didn't want to happen or it doesn't happen, it's God's will. And it's just kind of like, what about you? What about your own power and your own ability? I work with the holy aspect of Baphomet, known as Sophia, as the first of that spirit was the Templar Knight during the Spanish Inquisition. So the first notation of Baphomet at the name is a linguistic misunderstanding of Muhammad. However, if you go through history, and I've spent, I've spent years researching this. The oldest mention that I've been able to come up with of a goat god that has maybe not in appearance, but in functionality, the oldest god that I've been able to attach Baphomet to is the goat of Mendes from Egypt. And then if you follow Europe, the Middle East, right, the Orient, even the Americas, like when you look through history, there's always some semblance of a goat god that has existed throughout history, right? Goats used to be highly revered, right? I mean, goats in Egypt, at least during that time, were, on the same level as cows in India. So it's one of those things that I believe, through everything that I've looked up, that all of these goat entities, Pan, Baphomet, the goat of Mendes, Karunos, all of these are the same entity. They've just found a way to present themselves differently in society and interject themselves into society and into culture. Baphomet is the newest iteration of that god, of that entity, right? Levi didn't know that when he created the image of Baphomet that he was bringing into manifesting into existence this era's, new goat god, right? And unfortunately, unlike most other cultures, because of pop culture, we've perverted and manipulated the image of Baphomet and the name of Baphomet to fit a narrative of the devil and Satan and things like that. And Baphomet isn't like a universal image for every entity that you want to work with, right? Because for some people, Baphomet is Baphomet. For some people, Baphomet is Satan. I've heard people call the statue of Baphomet, that image of the Levi's image of Baphomet, they call it Lucifer, which is totally off base. And so I do believe that Baphomet is an actual entity, and I do believe that Baphomet is significantly older than the Knights Templar. The Knights Templar is just where the name came up, right? And Levi then created an image based off of the description that the Templar gave. But when it came to actual practice and functionality, it's more aligned with the Goat of Mendes than anything else. Which means, in my opinion, Baphomet is the Goat of Mendes just resurrected. So, also, Sophia is a very kind of neo-context entity. It's been mentioned here and there, but it's very loose. Kind of like the definitions, right? So I actually have notes on it, so if you give me a second. So Sophia in the Gnostic tradition, right? Wisdom, right? Not just intellect, but the primal divine insight into the nature of reality. In many Gnostic myths, she is the emanation of the unknowable source, the monad, who descend into the material realms. Her fall is both a tragedy and the catalyst for creation. She brings the spark of divinity into the material world, but becomes bound in it. This descent parallels the Luciferian mythos, illumination entering darkness to awaken the trapped sparks of consciousness, right? Now, the connection with Baphomet and Sophia is loose at best, right? So Levi's depiction of Baphomet, the hermaphroditic goat-headed figure balancing opposites, can be read as Sophia after transmutation, right? Where Sophia is often portrayed as the lost or fallen wisdom, Baphomet is the reclaimed integrated wisdom, shadow and light, spirit and matter united, right? The breasts on Levi's Baphomet echo the feminine, nurturing aspect of Sophia, while the phallic symbolizes active creation and will, right? The synthesis embodies gnosis, the union of wisdom, Sophia, and power. So the thing is there's no direct connection between Baphomet and Sophia. It's an implied connection because of the female aspects of Baphomet, right? But to try to create a direct connection between them, it's not impossible. It's just it's a bit of a stretch. What do you mean it's the at bash cipher? What does that mean? Acknowledge that the chapter will always be in the book. Barclay speaking, also you teach. Yeah, most definitely. Evie, most definitely. And as far as like ending like a working with an entity, I mean, build towards that, right? I would say when the time comes, if you feel that, then, you say that, hey, I feel like that this working is, coming to a close, and, it's time to, you know, move forward, just like you would like ending any relationship, right? It's not, we're not going to stop talking. We're not going to stop being friends, but, that type of thing. I mean, it sounds kind of goofy, but, it's pretty much the same way. And Samuel, don't misunderstand me. Like, I'm not trying to, I know what cipher is, but what do you mean at bash cipher, right? I don't, what do you mean at best? Because you put it's the at bash. Like, I don't know what that part means. I know what a cipher is. In the bash, okay, it's a bash cipher. The name spelled is Sophia. Okay, so Baphomet actually comes from Latin. And so here's the thing, right? So I actually have this. Hold on a second. I'm going to pull this up. So I actually included it. So Baphomet's actually a sentence put together from Latin, right? So bear with me here. We did not know that we were going to be getting into this conversation. Otherwise, I would have had this stuff prepared already. So let's see here. Yeah, so this is where it comes from. Right there. And that so it's baptism, wisdom, temple hominum, right? So father of the temple of peace of all men. So if you take the whole thing, so Baphe Metis, Temophab, right, comes out to be father of the temple of peace of all men, right? Or if you go through Levy's kind of translation of it is, right, Templar of the father of all wisdom, right? So, which is where you're probably getting Sophia from, because Sophia is wisdom. So that's where that connection is coming from, because wisdom, metis, is wisdom. Right? So with Levy, it's baptism of wisdom, or it could also be read as baptism and wisdom, in initiation into the temple of the Father of all, right? Is as we kind of move forward from it, right? So we go from Greek to Latin to then to English, right? So, trust me, I've done a lot of research in this stuff. Like I've been into this for 20 plus years, and that's kind of what, when it comes to Baphomet, like I think I'm the only person that I know that is a full-on dedicant of Baphomet to the level that I am. So it could be where like the whole Sophia connection is coming from, which I'm not saying that there couldn't be a spiritual realistic connection there. I haven't explored it, and if you have, then that's awesome. You know, that's great. um I think, you know, go for it. Do you. Like, I'm not here to change anybody's opinion or change anybody's direction. You know, I'm just sharing my knowledge, right? If that helps you advance your own, cool. If it doesn't, cool. You know, like, I don't want it to come across as me attacking like your belief system or what, you know, what you find to be true. You know, if you get your results and it works for you, then great. You know, like, go for it. You know, so just keep doing you, right? Um, so continuing forward, right? Talking about kind of like, again, kind of going back into this idea of people that are aesthetic witches, right? That are into pop spirituality. Right. I've always looked at the LHP, like the left hand path, as like anti-fragmentation, right? Reclaiming every piece of yourself, right? Even the unacceptable ones, right? The shadow work is deep. The shadow work is heavy. You know, it's something that I think a lot of people are afraid. I think the reason why people are afraid of the left-hand path is because of the work that you have to do in yourself, which is one of the reasons why I kind of started the Infernal Compass. The Infernal Compass, you know, you can either work it by yourself or you can work it in a coaching format, whichever, you know, functions or works for you. But, you know, I think that, you know, when it comes to the shadow work, I think people need, you know, need that, you know, they need kind of like help going through it. Very much. So, you know, and so I think the shadow work aspect is the part that people run away from, and I think it's the part that people don't want to work when it comes to the left hand path occult. Because when I say left hand path, I'm not talking about working with the demonic, right? Like, I mean, that's not, they're not, they don't go hand in hand, right? You can be left hand path and do nothing with the demonic. You don't have to work with demons to be left hand path. It's not like they're not mutually exclusive. So being left hand path is just understanding your own responsibility to yourself. And like, there's a lot of Jungian psychology that goes into the left hand path that I believe that shouldn't be avoided. And I think a lot of people do avoid it. And in avoiding it, you know, it causes significant issue, you know, with the process, because the first thing with the left hand path is yourself. Right? The shadow work is what makes your heart lighter than a feather. All be weighed. Yeah, exactly. You know, I think, you know, going through that process is the most important part. And I think it's the part that most of these aesthetic witches avoid. Because I think having the candles and having Mercedes, good morning. Hope you are well. So I think that like, when you go into something, like one of the things, like when you start to work with, you know, demons, is not to, like, you have to go into, right, demonic work with at a point of authority, right? You have to go into it, right? You have to have a level of being an authority of what you're doing in order to get the results that you want to get, right? And if you haven't done the shadow work and you haven't worked on yourself and you haven't improved, like, you know, how you do things for you, that's going to be reflected in your work, right? And a lot of these people, these aesthetic witches, think it's just like, you know, buying the cool candles and the skulls and the statues and then saying a bunch of words that, you know, don't mean anything. right? Without intention, right? It's work done without intention. The path is a war, eternal war against comfort, cowardice, and conformity. External war against culture, pressures to dilute, sanitize, and just play nice, right? How this war is won: relentless practice, daily work, no matter how you feel, tracking results, journals, omens, dreams, accountability, not to the crowd, but to your own will. Magic without discipline is cosplay. Putting in the groundwork, exactly, 100%. 100% Mercedes. Now I'm going to repeat that one more time. Magic without discipline is cosplay. It's not a game. Like especially like if you're doing, your left-hand path and you're working with the demonic, you need the discipline. You need the discipline. Because I'm not going to sit here and say that, the demons are going to destroy you or they're going to attack you, right? Because they're not inherently good or evil. They just are. But your mind might not be able to handle what you're getting involved in if you're not prepared for it on a psychological level by doing the shadow work that's needed to be done. Shadow work isn't inherently a spiritual thing. It's working on your mental health to make sure that you are in the best mental fitness that you possibly can be to get involved in the things that you're getting into. And most of these aesthetic witches, these pop spiritualists, don't do that. They talk about it, but they don't do it. And it is evident that they don't do it. Right? This path is transformation through fire, not mood lighting. And illegal in Canada. I like that. I did not know that. Maeve is our resident Canadian. Maeve, can you confirm that? Is it illegal to say, like, to pretend to be a witch in Canada? Give him a second. We'll go over it. Right. So again, this path is transformation through fire. It's not mood lighting. Not sure. I would need to confirm. Okay. I mean, if it is, that's really cool. That's really cool. Protect the real witches. So people can't make shit up. I mean, I'm assuming that kind of falls into, scamming people, right? Like, pretending to be something that you're not, like you're a psychic or some shit and you're not actually psychic, and then getting people's money to talk to their dead kid or something, like something disgusting like that. I'm assuming that's probably something that's like why something like that's in place. If you claim the left-hand path, prove it to yourself in the dark when no one's looking. If you can't do that, then admit you're here for the costume party and step aside for those willing to bleed for their own becoming. Choose the work or choose the mask, but don't confuse the two. Confirmed. Interesting. That's actually really, really cool. I like that, right? So, yeah, with that being said, guys, that is going to be it, right? And I'm going to repeat the last part here. Choose the work or choose the mask, but don't confuse the two of them, because they're not the same. The work unmasks. Exactly, Evie. All right, well, thank you, everyone, for being here. It's been great. It's been lovely, right? You guys are fucking amazing. You are the reason I do this. Samael, it's been great to have you in here. Great conversation. Maeve, thank you. Disciple, thank you. Evie, thank you. Paranormal Witch, we're right at the end. But thank you for coming. You guys are amazing. Mercedes, everyone, thank you very much. And, you know, like, comment, subscribe, all that fun stuff. Please do it. Do the thing. Share it, right? Get it out there. And hopefully I'll see you guys later on tonight. And as always, hail thy fucking self. See you in the next one. Peace the fuck out.